Dudes, ladies, guys, everyone. Here's the thing. Heath, are you being serious right now? Because I'm being
dead
serious right now.
I'm dead serious.
All right, I need serious Heath. This is serious Sid.
I'm serious. I'm ready.
All right, because, man, here's the thing. I got to tell you. I got to tell the people listening. It's a post-COVID world.
Lots has changed.
The world looks different today. And the agency has to stay relevant, has to stay competitive, has to be a little different.
Yeah, I think we have to stay ahead of the game. We have to stay ahead of what's coming. We have to know what's next.
So how do we do that?
We got to be a connected agency.
Ooh, what does that mean?
I don't know. We got to get into it, though.
Oh, let's go, baby.
Welcome to the VIP podcast.
Season 3.
Let's go. Welcome to the VIP Insurance Podcast, and I'm so glad you're here hanging out with me today in Season 3 as we are hanging out with my man, Mike Becker from the Professional Insurance Agents, the National PIA, actually, in D.C. area. So I'm so glad he's here hanging out with us. We're going to be talking all things state of the industry this month, and no better person to talk about that than Mike Becker, who's got his finger on the pulse in so many different ways. And if he does it, then he's got people all over the country that do. And so, Mike Becker, thanks for hanging out with us today.
Oh, man, thank you. It's always good to spend some time with you.
Yeah, man. And those that know and may not know, Mike and I go way back, and, you know, he's got a relationship with my family and my wife and my kids, and we just know each other in the industry. And so it's an honor for me to have you on because of what you mean to our family and what you mean to my wife and our things, because my wife works for the PIA as well. So when I say Mike, if he doesn't have his finger on the pulse, and someone else does, and so it might be Stacy, it might be someone else in another state. So, and that's got to, before we get into you, my squirrel brain's already running, but, you know, that's got to play a big role in what makes you guys so successful is your affiliates.
Yeah, I've always said, I think the best part about the organization, I think the best part of this industry is the people, right? And to your point, organizationally, we have more than a couple dozen affiliates, state or regional based around the country. So we're really able to get in the weeds and in the field, if you will, right in the agencies with our members to really understand what they're dealing with and how we can better serve them. And you're right, we're able to do that right with our affiliates and our affiliate staff and the affiliate boards around the country. It gives us a great reach.
It really is cool, and I've been able to be a part of so many different either national or local state association events, and to see, as you mentioned, boards. I mean, you have real deal agencies out there every day in this market that we're in are dealing with the issues that my listeners of this show are dealing with every day on these boards, communicating with the affiliates who communicate with you, and you're able to keep that finger on the pulse. And so, again, so glad to bring you on the State of the Industry episode. But before we get into all that, can you tell me, how did Mike get to where he's at now? Can you take me back a little bit and lead me up to where you are now?
Sure. So I'm at just about 17 years here at PIA, and I got a story like so many of us in this industry, which is I didn't pick this, I fell into it.
That's yeah.
And I'm a DC native guy and had a little bit of a political government relations background. I'd spent some time with another organization in a completely different industry, as pharmaceutical industry, representing non-prescription interest on Capitol Hill. And one day I was almost on a whim, looked at PIA and came over, and it was one of the best decisions I've made, and blinked my eyes, and it's been 17 years. Working on behalf of PIA's independent agent members.
So you started off with PIA on the legislative side, right? Is that what you just said?
I did. That's been my background, and I had a real short stint on Capitol Hill. Member of Congress from Texas had hired me. He hired me, turned around, and then lost his next election, which he told me two unrelated events, which I'm still trying to believe. And then, went over to the lobbying world. And like I said, represented some interest on the pharmaceutical side, and then moved right into the legislative side of PIA and spent, about 5-6 years doing the advocacy work for PIA before moving into the CEO role.
So that right there, I think a lot of people that hear, whether you talk about the association of PIA or the other ones or any other association out there, I think people fail to recognize a lot of times what you guys are doing on the Hill, so to speak, for our industry and for the agents listening right now, or the carriers listening, or the MGAs listening, or whoever's out there listening right now. So, could you talk a little bit about, as we're in 2024 now, full swing. I got to spend some time on the Hill with you guys last year, which is a very big honor for me. But talk to me or talk to the audience a little bit about what you guys are currently dealing with. What are some of those issues? I know they vary, but just as much as you can give me on that.
Sure. I think, when it comes to advocacy, PIA does four things for our members. We inform, we educate, we advocate, and we protect. And advocacy, I think in general, by the way, is much more than just legislative or regulatory advocacy. It means just advocating and fighting for all sorts of needs that independent agents are dealing with. There's understandably so, folks are really disenfranchised with Washington right now, and it have been for many years. But it doesn't change the fact that, they are passing laws, sometimes these massive pieces of legislation that are affecting you and agents and carriers all over the country. Right now in Congress, there's over 12,000 pieces of legislation that's introduced, and we're halfway through a 2-year cycle. So 12,000, we'll probably see 16, 18 plus thousand pieces of legislation introduced. And they have passed on average as few as 3%, as much as 7+%. But the bottom line is they could be passing on average one law a day, over a 2-year period. And what's remarkable to me is how much that legislation pertains to the financial services industry or insurance in general. So, I hate kind of like this threatening tone to this, but it's you could be written out of business with one stroke of the pen. And, part of our day is fighting that and, trying to prevent that and, slow down some of what we see as oversteps maybe in the legislative or the regulatory process. And then some of it's advocating for solutions to make the lives of our members better. And, an example of that might be on S corporations, if an agency is filed as one, to make permanent the tax deductions available to them. And, that's what we're doing. We have an incredible team here in Washington, but also with so much regulation coming from the states, our state affiliates do an awesome job of this. So, independent agent members that are part of PIA are really well represented. And sometimes we're really fighting to prevent something or we're really fighting to make something happen. But it's an interesting time in Washington with, it's on one hand, so much going on. On the other hand, not a lot going on, right? But they do have the ability to change your life with one stroke of the pen. And most members of Congress are not insurance agents. And we spend a lot of time educating members of Congress, that is, on what an insurance agent is, an independent insurance agent, the value that they bring to their customers and to their communities. And I think it's important that they understand that. So when they're legislating, they're making informed decisions.
Yeah, and as I mentioned a minute ago, I've had the honor and privilege of going multiple occasions here, and I find it fascinating to see, number one, the passion that goes into this when you have the pre-meetings and you have the things that go on before you go and you give us talk tracks and the things to deal with. And again, it's state by state. And so we're fighting for what's going on in your state. If you're listening to this in New York or in Arkansas or in Alabama or in California, we are dealing with issues hitting your state and your agency. And again, I've been able to go and be a part of that, and I find that fascinating first, that passion that PIA has and that they love and they want to be a part of that. And then the other thing I love to see is the board members or the people that show up on behalf of their state, when they come out of those meetings, just how good they feel and like that meeting meant something to them. And they come out like, man, I didn't think these legislators would listen, but you come out and they're like, man, they really do listen. They're taking notes and they got their staff in there with them, making sure they take notes. And it really does make a difference.
So, if you don't know what Heath's talking about, every single year we bring our members into Washington. And what Heath was just saying is it's an intimidating town sometimes. The halls of Congress are very big. There's
Yes.
435 members of the House of Representatives. There's 100 in the Senate. And we really try to break these issues down for our members to and then send them on Capitol Hill and help set up the meetings so they're able to go into their member of Congress, their office, and follow a plan of action for the entire organization. All independent agents that may be customized based on their state or what committee maybe the member of Congress sits on to really advance some of these interests that are affecting independent agents. But there's an organization, it's called the Congressional Management Foundation, and for years they have studied and surveyed members of Congress and have known to have a pretty inside perspective to the way that Congress works and members of Congress think. And a question they've asked for years is, how do you make a decision? This is to a member of Congress. What really, influences you? And lobbyists who do this for a living, and I think if you were to describe what a lobbyist does in one word, it's educate. That's up there. It's towards the top of the list, but it's not the top of the list. And the number one person or group of people that influence a member of Congress's decision is a constituent. So even though we have teams that are doing this and kind of the technical element of this every single day, there's nothing like the real thing when a member like yourself, all over the country comes to Washington, knocks on the halls of Congress, the doors of Congress, and sits down with a member of Congress and says, I need you to vote for this, or I need you to introduce legislation that would solve this problem. It's a really effective way to advocate for organizations, message, if you will.
Yeah, and the last thing I'll say about that, because, I don't want to be about my experience there, but one of the reasons why I did want to bring you on is because they do. These people, these constituents walk out, they do listen. And one of the stories I have, I'll never forget because it really meant a lot to me. We were going to see one of the senators in Arkansas, and he wasn't able to come to our meeting because he was on the Senate floor. And he had his staff bring us over to a little room right outside the Senate floor. And he came out of a Senate meeting to sit down with us for 15 minutes, hear what we had to say, took his notes, and shook our hands. Sorry, guys, I get back into the Senate meeting. We're about to do whatever. And I was like, holy smokes. And so to go through the secret tunnel and get on the train and to do this, and it was just one of those things I will never forget.
Yeah, it's super important. And I think
they care.
They do care. And I think the important thing for the the industry to understand, and I sometimes there's a disconnect here, is it's a lot of the work is technical, right? Some of the changes that we're working on is one of them, for example, and we had some success factors last year organizationally and continue to see that this year, are with the Federal Insurance Office, and it's regulatory authority that the Federal Insurance Office has when compared to state regulators. And some of the language that we deal with, it's candidly, you lose people. But at the end of the day, do you want to call 1-800-WASHINGTON when you have a problem, or do you want to call your state regulator, most of whom if you're a crop insurance agent somewhere out, likely in the Midwest, we're looking and have been looking at trying to reinstate the inflation adjustment for you to make sure that you're correctly compensated for the work that you do. If you're a flood insurance agent, particularly with the threats that we've been seeing over the past months and years over shutting down the government. If you shut down the government, you could shut down the NFIP, which has happened in the past. It shuts down home sales with required NFIP policies, and that affects the lives of our members. There's cannabis safe harbor legislation that we're working on. Cannabis is legal in a lot of states. It's not legal federally. So if an agent is caught in the middle of trying to insure something that is legal within their state, but is there a federal component, a multi-state component, or money that moves hands and puts criminal liability on the agent? These are the things that we work on a daily basis to make sure that our agents can sleep well at night, go to work, and run their agency, protect their community, and go home at night and put food on the table. And some of it, we get in the weeds on some of this stuff, but it's all equally important to make sure that the agents are well protected.
And I love that you guys at the PIA, for your members, keep that finger on the pulse, and you kind of know what's going on out there legislatively, which also leads to, not just legislative, but in so many other areas of the industry. And so I know that, so one of the biggest things that I hear about when you talk about state of the industry, a thing that comes up over and over and over is finding talent. And,
Mm-hmm.
I get this call, I get this conversation so much of like, I need a CSR, I need an agent, I need a producer, I'm struggling here, I'm struggling there. And I know that, that ties into another big thing there, which is culture. So I wanted to see if you guys over at PIA, what you guys are doing to affect that or to, provide a solution to that, how you guys are involved in that.
Well, we're pretty involved in it. And if for no other reason, here's why. Every year we survey our members and ask all about the challenges that they're dealing with on a daily basis. And we're waiting on this year's final results to come in. But last year, and this is very consistent in prior years, the number one challenge that agents are facing, and it's not trying to figure out AI or implement technology or these other issues, it's talent. So I'm a huge believer in culture, and I think that's directly tied to finding and hiring and retaining talent. The very first thing that, when I'm asked by an agent, what do I do? How do I address this issue? There's a lot of ways to go forward in this conversation, but one of the very first things I say is look in a mirror and what do you see? Because if you see an agency that is really forward thinking and they've, maybe they have things like hybrid work policies or they've deployed technology. And there's no one size fits all, by the way, but if you fit in the forward thinking bucket, or what do you see in that mirror? Do you see a time machine? My agency, it looks like exactly the same way it did in 1995 or 1985. That's a real issue because for years we talked about bringing millennials into the agency. We're past millennials. We're on the generation behind that now. And even just a couple of years ago, Heath, you and I have talked about this for years. A couple of years ago, you'd bring somebody on, and I used to say, well, they really want to see this level of technology or this type of a workforce. Once out the door, that is old news.
Yep.
There's a full-blown expectation. This is what a workplace needs to look like by today's workforce. And I think the first thing as an agency owner, you've got to get your arms around that. Am I an agency where people would want to work? And if so, then we'll go from there.
Yeah, and I think you brought up some stuff, as far as the time machine goes and technology and what you guys, what you can look like as an agency and utilizing technology or utilizing your strengths there. And I wonder with PIA, obviously you guys have a lot going on with the hiring and the culture and the talent thing, but for lack of time, I just wanted to, and they can go check that out on the website and look at those things. And what's the website address that they could go to if they want? Let's just give the national one.
Yeah, you can go to pianational.org.
Okay. And then you can find your affiliates from there too. I think there's an affiliates tab that you can click on.
Yep.
But, okay, also, you guys, PIA does have a finger on the pulse because when you talk PIA, you're talking, agents from across the country, all different sizes, Main Street America, all the way to large, multi, location agencies. You guys have your finger on the pulse when it comes to technology. And I was, alerted of that at a conference I was at with a council. I think you guys have it. I don't know. I don't want to butcher it. So tell me what this council is. And
I'm going to make it real easy for you. It's the Technology Council.
Oh, okay.
PIA Technology Council.
The PIA Technology Council. And so when was that started and what was the genesis in that? And how did that come about?
So we actually started an iteration of it, if you will, a couple of years ago, but we relaunched it in 2023.
Okay.
And the objective of it is we got real straightforward with it, and it's bridging the gap between agents and technology. There's a slew of technology and insurtechs out there that want to get in front of agents, and we have the ability to facilitate that sort of platform. And our members are constantly asking more and more about technology. And it's awesome because if you went, 5 or 10 years ago, the more we talked about technology, agents were saying, hey, I don't know where to begin, or hey, I don't want to shut my retail operation to be this online tech-driven agency. And we're like, no, technology is a tool in your tool set, right?
Amen.
It's another opportunity for you to have a broader reach and serve, more customers or to, improve your workflows and operate more efficiently. and I feel like we're really on the far side of that hill now, and agents really are saying, who are the players, or what type of technologies are available out there. So what we've done with the Tech Council is we're facilitating that platform and creating things like this year we'll have demo days and more, we have something called coffee break webinars. But also we'll do in-person events. We're going to film a lot of them. So you agents will really have more access to some of the technology solutions that are out there. And we're really excited about that because there's just so much available to agents, and we didn't want to, hang our hat on just one solution or one silo. We really wanted to say, let's break this open and really show the sort of solutions that are available to agents today.
Yeah, since I've been, hosting this podcast and we've been really deep in season 3 and focused on different avenues, and as we get into this one with state of the industry, one of the things that does keep popping up is what you're talking about right now. And I think it is, every agency is different. Every agency looks different, and you guys have first look at that at the PIA, but what technology works for one agency may not work for another. What works for, this producer may not work for the same producer in your office. And so I think to be able to grasp that a little bit more and be able to understand that, and I'm glad that PIA is, looking into that and trying to help facilitate that conversation. And so I was able, again, to sit in on one of those meetings, and I was, highly informed. And so at Vertafore, we believe in that the technology, again, is there to enhance your people, not to hurt. And so that being said, I didn't mean to interrupt you, but I appreciate you, stating that. That I keep hearing that over and over and over. But all agencies are different, and just because this Vertafore product works for this agency doesn't mean it's going to work for yours. Or just because this platform works for this agency doesn't mean it's going to work for yours.
Yeah, and that's true. You hit the nail on the head. That you've got to really look at, what are you trying to accomplish as an agency? You got to meet your customers where they want to be met. And there's different solutions to help you do that. And while we're providing this platform for insurtechs to reach agents and to educate agents, we're also working to guide agents along that process. Because one of the things that we tell agents with insurtech is avoid the shiny object syndrome.
Yeah.
Really, what's your tech stack look like? What's your plan? How does this fit into your workflows? And the number one issue that agents have told us in last year's survey, like I said, we're looking forward to unveiling the new results soon of the 2024 agent survey. But relative to technology last year, it was lack of training. And if you talk to some of the insurtech providers, the technology providers out there, they say, we have lots of training, and we do A, B, C, and D. And I think there's an element that organizational or industry-wide, rather, we can focus on making sure that the right training is available to reach agents, because agencies got to understand, what's your business plan for this? What's your set of budget? Make sure your staff is trained. Everyone's buying into it. What are the expectations of this? Are you setting goals and timelines and moving it along? And I think there's a risk, and we've seen it with technology, of you go the shiny object syndrome, you buy a platform and you want it to work wonders tomorrow, and no one understands what it is, how it works, doesn't integrate, those sorts of things.
Yeah, and you guys, the PIA in particular, you were represented really well at a large tech conference that went on this year in August in Indianapolis, which I thought was cute and clever, the whole Indy Tech in Indianapolis. Way to go, Cass. But I thought more than the impact of the amount of people that were there, I think post-conference there was a lot of buzz and a lot of things that came out of that. But you, my friend, were featured were able to be a part of a tech council with some big names in the industry, including your own. And our very own Amy Zupon at Vertafore was able to be a part of that. What was that for you, and what was like a big takeaway from that for you?
Well, I think it took advantage of the opportunity or the need that exists in this industry to bring a real focus to agents and technology. Tomorrow's agency is here. In fact, we organizationally have been working on a program, and we originally were using the word future in the name of it, and we got rid of it because the future's here. It's now. It's not something that you need to be planning for and implement this in 5 or 10 years. It is here now, and you're right. I mean, kudos to Jason for organizing Indie Tech, and I think you'll be seeing more of that this year and hopefully for years on. But I think it was great that there was an outlet for this, for someone in the industry to run with this and have it supported by so many organizations like PIA and Vertafore and many others, by the way, because in addition to the panel, there was a number of vendors that showed up and did a trade fair, so it was widely supported. But there's a real need for this, and I think there's a real need for an educational component to help agents understand what is out there and how do you implement it, and also put an emphasis on the need for this in a maybe a more enhanced timeline.
Was there, because I thought another thing about that, if you haven't seen it, it's somewhere on YouTube out there, the video's out there, but I thought the moderator did a really good job on this. Was there a question or an answer or anything that stood out to you from that panel discussion, whether it was somebody else's answer or a question from the moderator or just anything out there? And if there's not, that's fine too, but I just didn't know if there's anything that stood out to you from that.
I think that I was the only person up there kind of representing the agent.
Yeah, which was cool. But yeah.
Which was very cool. And the question that stood out to me about that is this was a tech-driven conversation. And there was a question that Peter had asked specific to open APIs, and obviously was getting at integration. And the other panelists had a tech perspective on this and had a lot to say from a technology standpoint. And I thought it was one of those questions that maybe I get a pass on. And I didn't. At the end of it, Peter said, what about you? How do agents feel about open API? And, I shared with them that agents aren't waking up worried about open APIs. They're waking up trying to figure out, how to take on the employee that just left and fill the void, and where are they going to find talent, but they can't get into the agency because they got a renewal appointment at 11 a.m. They have another offsite in the afternoon. By the way, the toilet's broken. They got the agency. They got
real problems.
They got these real problems, right? And they want their technology to work. They are taking, hard-earned money from this agency, and they are investing it into solutions to grow the agency, to better serve their customers. They want it to work. So as far as there's tech-driven agents out there that I would love to engage in an open API discussion. But your average agent out there, they don't want to buy technology and then not have it work. Yeah. That's their level of let's get this moving forward, and let me get it integrated into the agency, train the staff, and let's move on.
Yeah, it's a great answer, and I've watched that a couple of different times. Yeah, I think that was a good spot there. I think you answered that very well. I think you represented Main Street America agent and just independent agent in general very well, and so I appreciate you doing that. And so from Tech Council to the Indie Tech Conference, to all of those things, I think it's really cool. And I think that when we talk about state of the industry, you can't ignore the fact that technology is here to stay, and it's not here to be afraid of or be scared of. It's here to enhance. With that being said, I know you can't live in this world today without hearing two letters, A and I. And so some people, that evokes fear and scarcity and people being worried about what that means, and some people embrace it and are jumping in. How does Mike Becker, or how does PIA feel about AI, and what are they looking at?
Let me tell you something interesting about AI.
Please.
That I think when most people think AI, they think about Rosie the robot from the Jetsons. And I just shared with you a minute ago here that the future is now. We are there. Well, the Jetsons, everybody knows the Jetsons, right? We think of this long-running TV show. It ran for 1 year, by the way, from 1962 to 1963.
Are you serious?
We just are thinking of all the reruns we've seen. And it took place 100 years in the future. So it took place in 2062 and 2063. And George Jetson was 40 years old. So George is born right now. Like we are quite literally living in the future. And Rosie the robot, this intimidating robot, if you don't know the show, could vacuum and cook. We have these things. We have Roombas, right? We have automation
Yeah.
in the kitchen now, and it's all over our life. So I think there's intimidation with AI, but the reality is that it's a very broad term, if you will, or capability maybe. And there are some solutions out there that are customer facing, right? They can engage directly with the customer. And that AI solution may learn differently, right? Maybe you have a chat box that's very limited in scope and it can just, refer that customer to different staff. Maybe sometimes it's got access to your database and can provide a little bit more robust solutions. But on the other end of the spectrum, there's software out there that, can constantly be cleaning your data and tell you that, hey, you've sold Heath a home and auto policy, but we found out through a LexisNexis database that he subscribes to a boating magazine. Ask him if he owns a boat. Ask him if he needs an umbrella policy. And it's constantly making these recommendations. So the range of AI capability is very, very broad. And I think we're scratching the surface with it. But I think the average person out there, I think that doesn't know much about it. And I think there's a large group of folks that think of it as Rosie the robot that's just going to take over life. And I think, the other piece of it is wherever you fall on that spectrum, particularly agents, I think it's really important to educate yourself on it because your customers they may be deploying different AI in their life and expecting, improved customer experience, if you will, and your competition is. So it's important for you at an absolute minimum to understand it. And then from that point, make a decision on where you want to go with it.
Oh man, that's a good answer. And I think, there's so much, when people talk about technology and this buzzword, so to speak, of artificial intelligence or AI. We had a whole podcast a couple of weeks ago. I'm not sure it's launched yet or not, but people that don't even know what AI is, like they just call it AI because it's an automation, or they call it AI because it's this or that. And I think first and foremost, we just got to wrap our hands around what's in the AI bucket and what's not.
Right. Yeah. And then what do you do with it? I mean,
Yeah.
chances are, by the way, if you sat down and really took time to evaluate what AI is and what it means to you, you probably will determine to some degree it's part of your life already. And maybe that part of your life is that you're using a service, you have a business relationship, with an online retailer or something like that that's using AI. So you're already exposed to it.
Yeah.
But I also think that just like, it's a form of technology. So when you implement it into your agency,
Yeah.
I think it's really important to have a plan for it, to understand, who's responsible for it. AI in particular, like I said, it's very broad, so it's tough to make generalized statements. But, AI, it can be wrong, just like anybody else or anything else, right? So, who's going to be accountable for this? Who's in charge of monitoring the AI? Who's in charge of the training protocols? Depending on the capability of the AI, have you notified your E&O carrier to make sure that you're going to be covered if AI makes some sort of determination or customer touch? How will it be used in the agency? And I think, frankly, it's true for any form of technology, but it's particularly true for AI that you have a real specific business plan for implementing it within an agency.
Yeah, you talk about, and I'm one of these and I work for a tech company, and if they hear me say this, it may be trouble for me, but I am one of these people that I get scared of tech, or not scared of it, but I'm like not the most, because I am at that George Jetson, I'm 43 years old. By the time this launches, I may be 44, and I'm at that age of like, but I try to embrace it, do the best I can with it. But I think back to what you just said, I've had Alexas in my home for a long time, the Echo Dots and the whole thing, and literally we have one in every single room in our house. And, then I wonder, well, how did it know? How did my such and such know to put an ad up about this? Well, they're freaking listening to me every day. We've got our phones every single day in our hands, in our pockets, in our whatever. I mean, there's AI listening. There's constantly things listening to you, and providing, so in some ways, a better way for your life. And like there's so many times that I'll see a suggestion pop up on my computer or on my phone or on my Facebook or on this ad or that. I'm like, I was just thinking about that. How did it know? And I'm like, oh, because I was talking about this or that with Stacy or the kids,
Right.
or Chad came over. We talked about this. You know what I'm saying? I just think
Oh, I
you're
I know
dead
exactly
on
what it is. And I think that's my point, is that it's in your life.
already.
It's already in your life. And a lot of folks that I've talked to that are a little bit more hesitant towards it, I challenge them with that question. And it's not so much an endorsement for AI. It's just, hey, let's get a level playing field here. It is in your life, and we'll go through some of that. And you'll always see a light bulb click of, oh yeah, I use this, or I shop here, I do this, and the geofencing or the retargeting of advertisements and so forth. It's in your life, so it's a comfort thing. I don't think it's going anywhere, right? So it's at a minimum, what can you do is you can educate yourself on it, and if you decide to take it further, then really have a business plan to bring accountability to responsibility, checking for mistakes, checking with your E&O provider. What are the other considerations? Like the White House had recently issued a executive order over kind of disclosure or disclaimer requirements related to AI. So customers that are engaging with it know who they're engaging with. Yeah, that was always kind of an interesting question, is if I call an agency up and some AI solution picks up and says, hey, it's Heath, and turns out I love this Heath, and I call back and Joe picks up this time and say, forget Joe, put me on with Heath. And it's like, well, what's that? You never spoke to a person. How does that impact the trust in the
100%.
relationship?
Yeah.
So a lot of considerations.
Yeah, 100%. And I saw at the National PIA, or at a PIA event in Florida, a vendor that came up and had a robotic, or a robot that was selling insurance. Now is licensed. I had them on the
That was the
Vertafore.
holdup. Yeah, to sell, solicitor, negotiate
Yeah.
insurance, you've got to be licensed, and a regulator stepped in and brought that issue up with this particular solution provider and said, you have a software program that's you crossing the line. And the provider said, okay, we'll have it take a test. And it took a test. By the way, it's passed, and
Oh, it's fully
it's now
licensed now. And
it's
so,
licensed. It doesn't, the
but
law
what,
doesn't say you need to have a heartbeat.
right. But the scary part, not scary, but the interesting part and fascinating part, I shouldn't say scary, but for some people it was in that room. They showed a video of Steve Jobs selling insurance, and it was his voice,
Yeah.
his, mannerisms, his everything. And it was like, I would have never known the difference.
Well, and it can do that for anybody.
Yeah, it's exactly
It
right.
can listen to your voice and not very long, by the way, 30, 60 seconds, something like that. And it has your voice down, and it can mimic you. So stay tuned, because that will get regulated.
Sure
More
it
than
will.
likely well, they have to come out with some
Yep.
parameters around that. And that's where I think you saw the White House come out and say, at a minimum, there's going to be a disclosure requirement. But there's going to have to be, you know, some level of there's going to have to be some level of
Yep.
regulation around what you
I
do
agree.
nuts with.
I agree with you. And as we talk, as we wrap up here and we talk about, so as we've talked state of the industry, so to speak, I feel like what I'm hearing from you is, and I've heard this my entire career. I've been in it 23 years now, and you've been at it, you said 17, I believe. The insurance industry is forever changing, and it always has been. And the old joke in the 2000s when I first got in, it was, as soon as I learned how to spell insurance, it changes or whatever. And then, but I think even more now in 2024, it's changing even more rapidly. Would you agree?
Yes.
And
Um,
go ahead.
yes. I think technology is driving that. The insurance industry was known for many, many years being part of the financial services industry as being conservative and not really embracing change, being a little more behind the eight ball, and that's changed. The distribution models changed. I mean, mergers and acquisitions have we had this closely held model within the industry of internal perpetuation for decades, and we still see that. But now, two agencies have become one. 10, 20, 100, 200 agencies have become one. And that's changing the model. You have technology coming in, you have customer expectations. And then right now, by the way, you have a hard market, you have inflation. There's so much change going on right now. It is hard to keep up with. And I would agree with you that the pace of change has far outpaced anything that we've seen.
Yeah, I would completely agree, and I think we didn't even get into hard market, which I know you and I could have went on for that one, so maybe we'll have to do it again someday. But I appreciate you joining us. I appreciate you hanging out with us, Mike. And
Always.
before I let you go, could you share, if there's first of all, if anything I'm missing, anything that you wanted to share that's going on at PIA, and then maybe if there's some contact or if any way that people can get involved with the PIA, whether it's locally or nationally.
Sure. Well, check out pianational.org. And Heath, you mentioned this earlier. Right on there, you can find the websites to all of our affiliates. So we'd love to have you get involved at the local or the national level. And I think we have so many ways to get involved, but, through our 4 pillars of inform, educate, advocate, protect, our goal is to take on the daily challenges of independent agents so that they can sleep better at night and be more successful in their daily pursuit of growth and customer satisfaction. And since my first day in this industry, I have consistently said, and I don't know how many times I've told you this, that the people are the best part of this industry. I think, one of the things I'll mention on this is that, people are going through a hard time right now. Employee satisfaction, the entire business community is down. And people, the inflation and the market, people are just getting beat up right now. And so we need to take care of each other. And the people of this industry are its greatest assets. And, make sure we're being good to each other.
I love that. And I appreciate you joining us. Audience, I appreciate you coming and hanging out with us today with me and Mike and getting caught up on the state of the industry. Guys, make sure you go out and find us on YouTube at the Vertafore Insurance Podcast. Subscribe. Go to any of the platforms you listen to podcasts, and you can find the Vertafore Insurance. Look for the orange logo. Thank you so much, and I will see you guys on the next one. Well, that was a great episode.
Amazing. It was an amazing episode.
I really enjoyed that content. Guys, if you enjoyed that content and you want more of it, make sure you hit the subscribe button.
Nah, dude. You got to tell them to crush it. Crush that subscribe button, guys.
All right. Whether you want to crush it, smash it, hit it.
Bop it?
Sure, we could bop it. Either way, guys, we don't want you to miss another episode. We enjoy spending time with you, the VIP.
Yeah. We'll see you next week.